again going to make me wish I could sit down and have coffee with each of you and hear the story behind that example. So yeah, Banana Day, thanks, OJ. You are responsible for the smile of the last while. For those that have not met MJ, he's a friend who lives in the western part of Canada, and he can be counted on to have a virtual background that represents National Something Day. Sometimes it's rubber duckies, sometimes it's maple syrup. You just never know what you're going to get. So today, apparently, it's Banana Day. We have some, the objectives of today are these, and then I'm going to pass it over to the team that's going to walk us through this. What we have is an opportunity for you to become familiar with the methods library, which is, I think, one of the most amazing benefits of being an IAF member, and one that's probably an underutilized resource for most of us. And what we've been doing is each region of the IAF, of which there are 7, we've been hosting a global go around the world and learn about the methods library series, and this is number 3 in that series. And so there are different sections that you'll see inside the resource, and the one we're going to use today is about making decisions. And so there's 2 purposes today. One is really about learning the tool, being familiar with what it can do, the fact that it exists, the fact that it's available to you, and then less so, but certainly there, would be to give you a specific moment to dive into the content of that part of the library, which, as I said, today is about making decisions. And then at the end, we won't take long, but we're curious how we could make this tool and resource into an even more vibrant space for us, because it is, as I said, a little bit underutilized, and yet, as I think you will notice, it is also amazing. So really grateful that Ulla and our team here today, Andy and others, are going to be walking us through it. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Ulla and look forward to her giving us some history to this, at which point Andy is going to walk us through some of the features and how to navigate Session Lab. And then you'll have some time in a breakout room or 2 just to play with it. So you can hold it pretty loosely today. We've just got an opportunity to mess around and then get some feedback from you as to how that feels and what questions you have. So Ulla, thanks so much for taking it from here.
Thank you. Oh, I was wondering if you were sharing the screen, but I can certainly do that. Here we go. Just to give you some background to the library. The library was built in 2004 by one of our Hall of Famer IAF members, and I think he must have been a founding member, John Jenkins, who has passed away a few years ago. And it was initially a database on the IAF website, the old IAF website, and it was expanded through IAF member contributions. So methods that you find in the library are really created and placed in there and have been shared by members, either their own that they have used in the past, or those that they found useful and that have been that they found it from other resources, known and tested resources of facilitators. So in 2016, the IAF decided that it needed to have another platform. So we partnered with Session Lab, a young startup company, and Andy, who is here today with us, can maybe talk a little bit more about your company background. But it's a group of young men based out of Europe, mainly, I think, Andy. Andy, for example, is based in Barcelona, but he is from England. And there is an Hungarian colleague of his who is our contact and very helpful for us, to further develop our methods library within this platform. So we are using this platform. We are being hosted by Session Lab, and we launched the IAF methods library in this new platform in 2019 during Facilitation Week. And in October 2020, we actually started the series of webinars to really get more interest and share the power of this methods library with our members. And in the facilitation week, we actually invited non-members as well, but this series that we are now presenting is only presented and shared with members across the globe. So I think you are the third session out of how many regions we have? 8, is that right? 7 or 8? So here we are. We are inviting you to explore the methods library today. But before we do that, and before Andy shares how you actually access the library, the easiest way, I would like to share a quick poll and ask you for your experience with the methods library so far. Here is the poll, so please take a minute. It's 3 short questions. What's your experience with the methods library? Do you actually have a Session Lab account that you would need? And were you able to set it up before the session? And have you been in one of these webinars since last October? So we have 31 persons on the call. And I'm glad to see that most of you have actually been able to create your Session Lab account. Yeah, that's great to know. Great, folks, because that will, you know, save us a lot of time today, and you can just dive into navigating, searching the library. So can I end the poll? See, yes, 92 have voted, I think, with the others from the team. Here is, and I will share the results. Okay, we have 3 persons on the call, 12% of all, who say this is my go-to resource. That's great to know, great to know. So you have some experience with it, and you can help us in guiding others how to find the methods that you're really looking for. You have been frequently searching in it. You have searched, but only a few times. So we have 2/3 really who have good enough experience with it. And I think I would ask those 6 that say they frequently use the library or it's their go-to resource to please put an indicator in front of your name, rename yourself once more and put an indicator there and put an ML in front of it. So we know that you are an experienced methods library user, and I can assign the breakout groups accordingly. And we have your account set up, which I'm really grateful for. And you have attended a Session Lab library. A few of you also, that is helpful. And you can share what has been discussed so far and what you have learned so far. Great. So without further ado, I think it is time for me to hand over to Andy. Andy,
Thank you,
all
Ulla.
yours to access the library. And before I really stop talking, I'll just let you know, I will put the, well, I think since most of you have an account, you know how to access this easily, but I will put the link to the methods library page in the chat. Andy.
Fantastic. And I'll talk through a bit about how to connect your accounts as well. So hello, everyone. I'm Andy from Session Lab. Thank you for having me along here today. I'm going to give you a little introduction to what Session Lab is, maybe a bit about how it started, where we are today, and then a sort of overview of what Session Lab is, what you can do in Session Lab and the library, and we'll look at a bit about searching and filtering inside the library to find a good activity for your session. So Session Lab was started by a group of young men about 10 years ago in Hungary, in Europe. And it was founded because the group that had been working at university, they found every time they came to design a session, they designed it in maybe Excel, you send it to somebody else, they're working on version 3, you were working on version 2, someone else has got version 4, and it ended up being a little bit of a nightmare. They found there are a lot more efficient ways to do things. So the idea for an online session planner was born. So that was about 10 years ago. Over the years, it's grown and grown. We're still in sort of startup phase. We've still a small number of employees, so there's only about 7 of us, but we do have a very talented young female working for us as well. So we're no longer a group of just men as a designer, and she does a fantastic job making things look really good on our website in Session Lab. So what is Session Lab? I think of Session Lab in 2 big buckets. So you've got the whole session planner. So if you're designing your agendas or you do workshops or multi-day sessions, if you do that in Excel or heaven forbid in Word and find that a bit tricky, something like Session Lab, so an online session planner with loads of tools and things to help you keep track and save time when you're designing your session, that could be a good idea for you. We'll hopefully get round to having a quick look in the planner later on. And then the second part, the big part of Session Lab is the library. So if you are putting together a session, you usually have a team building activity or any type of icebreaker maybe, and you want to try and find some other ideas, some other inspiration. We've got our full library full of workshop methods, the method library. There's a big public-facing version full of methods, but of course, we're looking today at the IAF version, the IAF library, which is only available for IAF members. There's about 50 of those methods which are publicly available, so they're available to everyone who would sign up to Session Lab, but the vast majority are only available for you guys, for IAF members. So I'm going to show you how to get there by sharing my screen. So let's do this. Share my screen, there we go. So I've gone here to the IAF website, iafworld.org, and clicked on Learn and Grow. I think Ula shared this link with you. Learn and Grow along the top and down to Methods Library. This will give you a little bit of an introduction, a little bit of a background to the Methods Library, who can use it, and then you've got the big blue button here to click on to access the Methods Library. If you're already logged into Session Lab, when you click on that button, I'm just going to shrink down the camera there, you will see all the 495 methods inside the library. If you haven't got a Session Lab account, it will just show you the 50 that you can see that are publicly visible, but you can go ahead and create a Session Lab account by clicking on the top button here or clicking on the Session Lab logo. If you already have a Session Lab account, in your account settings, which you can access top right and click on accounts, this will show you your account settings where you've got your profile picture, etc. There's me at somebody else's wedding, unfortunately not mine. Here you can click on connect to IAF, so that if you've already got your Session Lab account and you want to connect it to IAF, you can just click on that button, and that's where you can do it. If you haven't yet signed up to Session Lab, here's the screen where you register for Session Lab, and you can just sign up here, and you see the IAF logo at the top there. So anyway, once you're inside the library, this is how it looks. Second tab, here we go. Yeah, 495 methods, and you can see along the top here, we've got all the different categories that you can filter by to find the ideal method that you're looking for. You've got the different libraries visible along the top. So you've got all methods. This is what I mentioned a little bit earlier, which is all the publicly available ones. You can favorite any that you like. So if you're inside the IAF library and you see one that you want to keep and remember for later, you can click the little heart down the bottom here, and that will add it to your favorites. So that's another place where you can store your favorite activities. And then you've got methods I created. So if we get to this a little bit later on, we can talk about creating methods and either saving them in your private library or sharing them with the IAF community. So we today are focusing on making decisions. So I'm going to click on this category at the top. You see it goes purple, which means it's been applied. If you ever want to unapply one of these categories, you do have to click again. So just make sure if you've got a category selected and you're maybe searching and not finding everything that you're hoping to find, you might have a category selected. So just deselect. And this is where you can browse through and see all the different methods that match that that category. So for example, if you're making decisions, you can browse through, see just a top level summary of what each one is talking about. You can click on any one of them, quick check why, let's click on that one, and that will open up with a little bit more information. Let's see if there's, let's go for this Pareto chart. Here we've got a bit of an introduction, a goal. We can see there's an attachment there too, which will help when we come to run this method. We've got some instructions and some materials that you might need in order to run this method successfully. You've got all the steps as you go through, and you might have a couple of comments down the bottom there from anyone who's used this or has some feedback on how to do it in the future. That's one way we can help make the library more interactive, is as you use a method, as you have some feedback on a method, add it to the bottom here under the comments, and then some of your colleagues can see how things have gone and what they can do to make it more successful in the future. Let's say that you want to find something very specific inside the making decisions area. So let's say that you want to filter, so you can filter a little bit more specifically. I'm looking for something that's going to be about 20 minutes long at a minimum, but no more than an hour. So I'm going to add that in here in the parameters. I've got I know I've got at least 10 people coming, but it might be as many as 20. And here we can search by tags. So you see on each of these little cards, each of these methods, there's a number of different tags. I can click on any of these to apply them, but I'm going to search for prioritization. There are some English spellings and some American, but if you're not finding something, you can start typing the word and you'll see it pops up with tag suggestions. So here I clicked on prioritization, and I can go down and click on any that might grab my eye. Well, the $100 test definitely grabbed my eye. So I want to have a look at that one, read what the goal is and any instructions there. And then I can see Joe's left a comment on there. So that's how you can browse through and filter inside the library. So I think I'm going to stop sharing and hand back over so we can have a go at looking inside the library ourselves, Ulla.
Fabulous. Thanks so much, Andy.
Yes, I think Rebecca is taking over from here.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's fine.
Great. Nope, that's terrific. Thanks so much for that quick overview. Folks, if you know that you do not yet have a Session Lab account, you have two choices. One is not to worry about it right now, because what we're going to do is in the small groups, surely somebody will have one. And so we only need one person in each of the breakout rooms to be sharing their screen and walking with the group through it. So you don't need to stress over setting up your account right now. If, however, you really want to or have tried and have run into any issues with it, anything like that, you're welcome to stay in the main room and we'll see if we can help you with that. I'm going to stay in the main room during this breakout. So don't stress if you personally don't have an account set up yet. I'm confident that someone in your breakout room will. What we're going to do is simply put you in those rooms for just shy of 20 minutes. And in those rooms, you'll have a chance to play with this. And so I'd invite somebody who does have an account and can share that screen with the group to be kind of the navigator. And you can choose if you want to give yourselves a specific scenario or if you want to just explore together. Maybe before we go in there, can somebody or several of you type into the chat if you have coming up or in the last month have worked with a group on anything related to decision making. Can you give us a little blurb in the chat? How big was the group? How long was the activity? And was there anything that would just sort of describe it? Was it high conflict? Were you setting priorities? What were you doing that was a decision-making activity? Because maybe we can use that to build some scenarios. What kind of decision-making do you find you're doing? So I just put in that I work with groups, usually groups of about 10 to 20 on decision making. And usually it's because we're setting priorities within a strategy and we've usually got 90 minutes to 2 hours together now because digitally we're working in shorter sprints than we did before. Yeah, Nora looks like hers is about the same. Looks like Paul's already using some fishbone activities, great. So it sounds like we've got lots of strategic planning, maybe 90 minutes, that kind of thing. So I would suggest maybe in your group, you set yourself those constraints as the initial way in. We are creative when we have some edges, right? So imagine you have a group of, call it 10 to 25 people-ish. You've got an hour and a half. You're trying to set some strategic priorities. Would love to see what kinds of things that you come up with. And we're going to have a conversation when you get back about two parts. One is, what did you think of the tool? And the other part is, what did you learn about facilitating decision making? So please hold both of those tracks in your mind, and we'll see you in 20 minutes.
Okay, here you go.
Hi, Ula.
Hi, Miss Jill.
Hey, Rebecca.
Hi,
I'm having technological challenges. So I was actually only going to pop in to say hi, just to kind of offer my support anyway, but I can't even get my camera on and my headphone doesn't seem to be working. So I need to go and do some playing. So it's a good thing I didn't plan to be with you for long, but just wanted to say hi. Thanks for keeping going. Ula, you're a rock star. This is your third of whatever. Please don't feel you have to attend all of them. But you're
I am really happy that Rebecca was just jumping in and taking control. So that's very good. You know,
well, we had a good planning meeting yesterday.
A new energy. If you bring a new energy to the thing here, that's cool.
Cool. All right.
Actually, I will stop the recording for now. Hold on.
Yeah.
Okay.
So first persons are coming back from breakout rooms. Fantastic.
All right.
Well, we almost have all persons are back and 2 new ones have joined us in the last few minutes. So
welcome.
Here we go.
All right. So glad you're back. Hope that that was informative. I would love to know, what did you love about it? Can you put in the chat? Let's talk about the tool itself before we talk about making decisions, but let's talk about the Session Lab experience. What are some positives about it that you discovered in the last 20 minutes? Just plunk those in the chat for us and we'll have a look. And while people are typing, if you would rather talk than type, I would love it if you would unmute yourself and just give us a couple of comments about what you found helpful about the Session Lab environment in there. Anybody? Marika, it says that you're talking, but I don't hear your voice, but I see your face. Hello. But I don't even see your live face. I just see your picture. Are you trying to say something to us? I'd love it if you did.
I think.
Hi.
I mean, it was great. I thought it was easy to navigate interface. There were a couple things we tried to figure out, namely how to move up a level and not be kind of to exit, I guess, a subcategory or something along those lines. But generally, I mean, it seems, I like the way that the different options are displayed. That's one thing that I love.
Great, thanks for that. Anybody else have anything they want to say that's not in the chat that they want to say out loud? Were there, and I'm seeing lots of comments there. Thank you for them. We'll capture these because part of the goal of these sessions is to get some feedback on how you're finding the tool. So that's helpful. Was there anything where you got a bit stuck or wish that that was a bit challenging or wasn't quite there that you wish were kind of an upgrade?
I'm curious to replace a go-to experience. So I'm just going to model my go-to experience, and the folks who design things can tell me it's never going to happen. So for me, in a break, like let's say a 5-10 minute break in a session, if I'm like really unsure if I'm on the right track, I would have one of those moments where I would like look through my book and breathe. And I'd be like, no, it's fine. We got this. We don't need another. We're fine. Look, there's many possibilities, but we're going to be okay. I don't know. Like, would I be there in the room in the moment, like flipping through my phone? Do you know what I mean? Like, how would I have that moment of, yeah, how would I have that kind of moment? Don't have to answer that. Just wondering if how to.
Leslie, let's dig into this. Can you say more about what it is when you open your game storming book or one other one? What are you looking at that's reassuring you in the book?
So this would be, so as a visual learner, right, part of my process for choosing how we got here in my design, I would have referred to something concrete, right? Might have gone through some old papers, might have looked at designs from before. And I'm the kind of person that would have a file with me and a book with me. Like if everything went crazy wrong, I would feel much more secure in the moment, knowing that I had something visual to trigger my memory, that I could have another possibility. Not because I'm going to read in the break how to do something new, but to be like, I've done that before. This is what we need right now. So if I had to make a change on the fly, I would have something very concrete, and I'm not sitting at my desk, like looking, at my laptop at the table, hiding from people. I'm still like scanning the room. I'm present, but I'm just having one of those moments, which is like, are we on track? We are. Okay. If things go sideways, I could always do this. So there you go. Does that help?
It does. So and I'm going to ask Andy to help in a second too. The first thing that comes to my mind is you can favorite things or make your own library. So I wonder about having a favorites in your browser on your phone that takes you to your favorite ones. That would be my first idea. Who else has ideas of how to, either that or we create a category called self-soothing for facilitators, right? Who has ideas of how to help? Say them out loud because it's easier for us if we can.
Sometimes when I'm facilitating or training, I usually have alternatives planned. Like I plan to use a particular method, but I have maybe, a couple of other alternatives that if that one just doesn't seem to be working with the group, I can shift to something else. I don't know if that's what you're talking about, Leslie.
I would say yes. The plans would exist. This wouldn't be about crisis planning. This would be about self-soothing, that we've got this, and there's lots of things in the toolbox. Okay. And like absolutely, that's what it is. That's that moment of I've got this, and that as a visual learner, seeing the things that I've done before, or that Okay.
Doug, what are you thinking?
First, shout out to Leslie for just being vulnerable and sharing, because this is what as facilitators we do think in our minds. So one of the things I've started doing is creating little mini breakouts, but just 2 or 3 slides. Okay, so then in my folder I have this, about 20 breakouts that I can literally click on, or just like you're saying, the group's in a break, seeing where they're going and thinking, what they could really use right now that's going to help to move them forward, and then I can just click on those 3 slides. Or what I've even done is put a quick link in a slide. So I know I can go to those slides, but they don't show up in a deck. If we are moving through something, which we have to do sometimes, even as facilitators, I can put that hyperlink, and I can go there with the group, or I can just whiz right by it and they didn't even know it was supposed to be there. They don't have any idea. Because sometimes you got to read on a group. Is this a group that will want to do that? Or is this a group that doesn't want to do it? So I hope that's helpful, but thank you again for sharing, Leslie, things we really think of.
Yeah, that's great. That's a great example of how you translate that to the the virtual world. Again, I'm not having this experience mostly even in the virtual facilitating world, right? I mean, maybe they're in a breakout group, but mostly then I'm checking in on them, right? I'm not looking at my book then either. So it's an interesting conundrum. Thank you.
I'm kind of the opposite right now. I kind of love breakout rooms digitally because it gives me a break. Like it's so different than in person. Don't you find that you know, in person, you're on all the time. And when in the virtual space, I'm like, I don't want to interrupt you, so I'll just let you be. And then I can go grab a quick coffee. It's really quite lovely. Someone that I know in the IAF who is not on this call and who shall remain nameless told me that at one time, he had had a very long or early flight or something, and he was really dragging in his session, and he went and had a nap. He was at a hotel and he gave people an hour task, and he went up to his room and fell asleep and didn't set an alarm because he did not think he was going to fall asleep. And he woke up, can you imagine? He woke up with 5 minutes left in their breakout time and went right back down the stairs and went back in the session. I think that's hilarious. So anyway, anything short of that, you're doing just fine. What else? I saw a note in the chat about some other challenges. So does anyone have one that they'd like to raise that they either see there, or something else you'd like to raise that when you were exploring Session Lab, you went, I'm wondering about this piece?
Rebecca, I would like to comment on a couple of challenges that I read here. May I?
Yeah.
When no methods came up with a variety of hashtags, how it is, if you had already a pre-selection in a category and then you select a hashtag, it may be that this hashtag does not pop up in that category. So if you would go back to viewing all methods and then use the hashtag, you have a wider view. So what it does, it really, from your first selection, it drills down closer into smaller selections. So it may be that some hashtags may not pop up under a certain category or a keyword that you had been looking for prior. And tagging or recreating all the IAF methods with online, virtual, remote would be helpful. That's what the team, the refresh team, is currently doing. We go through, we look at the methods and we say, hey, is this something that we can apply online? I just saw a method, you know, it's called the Martian. How do you best create a peanut butter jam sandwich? No, we don't necessarily want to do that online, I think, but others. So we are flagging, tagging these methods in our IAF library under the hashtag online, because that's the official naming for online facilitation in the IAF. Session Lab uses in their public library the remote or remote friendly hashtag. So those are just a few remarks to what I saw there.
Thanks very much for that. I was thinking about, just even from the few minutes in our group, how, I don't know, digital life has made me more impatient with search engines, because I'm so used to living in Google that I found that I was like, well, if those tags don't lead to something, or if I put in digital, not in online, and didn't come up with what I wanted, I might get sort of impatient quickly and assume that the library doesn't have what I need, rather than kind of being patient about it. Or when we first opened, the one we randomly opened, the first instruction was, excuse my dog. The first instruction was print the attached handout and hand out pens and paper. And it was interesting. My first reaction was, oh, like this inventory feels out of date when you read it. I was just thinking how much we've gotten used to digital life in a short time, because those instructions would have been entirely fine a year ago. And now I'm like, oh yeah, people used to use pens and paper. Like that's a thing. Like it's just incredible to me how quickly we get out of that habit, and how quickly I was to think internally, oh, this hasn't been updated. And so I say that positively. I mean it to sound positive, because I really appreciate the work that the update team is doing, because I think it'll make the inventory so much more usable for people to have both in-person and online versions of it. So thank you so much for that. Does anyone else have, I'd like to switch gears just for about 5 minutes and find out, did anyone, even in your quick exploration, have any kind of aha moment about facilitating decision-making? Was there anything new you saw, or anything you said, oh, I could probably apply that to something? Maybe we were so fixated on the tool, I don't know, but anybody have any decision-making facilitation tips that are not Session Lab specific, but actually content specific?
I'll put my hand up.
Sorry, go ahead. Hi, Deb.
Okay. So it was interesting because I've used some of those methods before, and we were talking through them. So did other people in the group. And there are times when you need to do something beforehand in order for that method to work. So for example, I can prioritize, but at some point I have to come up with decision criteria.
Yeah.
So just thinking about if there are a way to connect, like if you're doing this exercise, what are the conditions that need to be in place beforehand for that exercise to be successful?
Yeah. Yeah. So interesting to think about critical success factors in advance, right? What's the runway look like to get you to a place where you're ready to do that? Yeah. Thanks for that.
Just a little comment from my side here and an invitation to all of you. You know, if you have used like a method before and you said, but to be able to make a decision, I need to decide on decision criteria, this is what I've used. So there is this option to add your comment to the methods and to make the method description more valuable to other members and to share your knowledge with them. So that's really an invitation to everyone to contribute to the library, or even put your methods that you prefer and don't find in here up as a new method, add it to the library. That's also an invitation. But please use the comment to clarify these kind of, you know, how best to use a method and in which type of process. Yeah.
Thanks, Ula. Over to you, Ian.
Yeah, thanks. I just wanted to pick up actually on Ula on your point there, because and this may be just semantics, so feel free to ignore that. But I've been wondering, actually, it was one of the first things that I wrote down, anticipating an opportunity to provide feedback. And that's actually about the word comments in the library, is, you know, something around user tips. Something like that might prompt people maybe more to do that, rather than a comment, which to me invites like, hey, you know, thanks for putting this method. And you see that sometimes in the methods library, to which there's value, but the value added is really when people have tried this and said, you know, instruction number 7, you know, I might clarify it by saying, you know, X, Y, or Z. I don't know. I'm thinking aloud here.
I think that's a great suggestion,
Right,
Ian.
yes.
And I am asking Andy, please, to put it down for Session Lab to look at that.
Yeah.
And we have another comment in the chat. Somebody says user tips. Yes, Ian.
Right.
Or maybe hacks. I think that's a new thing on the block, hackathon. So a new hack would be a new twist to the method, whatever. Yes,
Maybe
but user tips
and
sounds good.
adaptations or something like that. You know, maybe how people have adapted that tool for use in your life.
Right. Please keep adding your suggestions about what we should call this section instead of comments. Thank you.
Thanks for that. Ula, I do have one question based on your previous comment, and then we're going to turn it back over to Andy. You mentioned about adding methods, and we may talk about this further later, but given the specificity of search terms that you sometimes have to use, or that you and I or other people might name a method differently, but it's actually the same method, is there a sort of a check for duplicates in content? Because I would be almost nervous to add a method that maybe was already there, but I didn't find it because I didn't search it with the right name.
That's a good point that you're making. I would say currently we don't have any guarantee. We know that there are duplicates of methods in there. Maybe not that many, but there are. For example, there are various SWOT analysis tools in there, 3 or 4, and they have the SWOT even in the title. When we moved and transferred the library, we actually went through each method and had a look that the process was at least well written and could be understood, and was actually, you know, made sense. And we had re-edited a few of them, but that was a few years ago, and we didn't think about online at the time. So we're slowly working through that now. And but we left the duplicates in there. And when somebody adds a new method, I think how it works is administratively, the method would first be there in draft, and then a team that has to be decided on who that is still. Maybe at the moment it's the refresh team that works on the methods library. In the future, there may be a group of 2 or 3 persons. who would then have a look at the method, sense check it, and also make a check whether it's there before. I think what I would recommend is that we then have like a cross-reference, a link to the other method. So we wouldn't delete it necessarily, because there could be a new twist to it. And because I also would always honor the contribution of an author. You know, I wouldn't want to delete it, but I would then try to at least make a reference to other methods by adding a link at
I
the
love
bottom.
that. Thank you for that. What I hear in that, folks, is don't hesitate to add stuff. Because I think I would hold back, but don't hesitate, because more is better in that sense. And if we can be cross-referencing, that's amazing. So not only is there this fabulous library of methods, there is also another dimension to Session Lab. And I was telling my group a little bit sheepishly that when Ula kindly sent me a process plan for today's call, I was like, look at how beautiful this outline is. This is amazing. I should learn how to do these amazing outlines, not knowing, because I'm new to Session Lab, that this was generated by Session Lab. So I'm kind of excited about this. Andy, can you tell us about the other feature that we are going to highlight today for people?
I can, yep. So as I mentioned earlier, Session Lab is really these two big parts. So one part is all the library, the bit that we've been exploring, and the public library too. And the other part is the session planner. So I'm going to show you a bit about getting in there. We're only going to have a few minutes, so it's just going to be a really brief sort of overview of just looking at a session and just understanding the planner. But we will have a session, I believe, in May, which is going to look at a lot more in depth in the session planner. So I'll get on with it and share my screen again. So when you're inside the library, let's go back there. So inside the IAF library, you can click on the Session Lab logo in the top left, and that will take you straight to your homepage, which looks a bit like this. If you haven't actually logged in, this will be your chance to log in. If you haven't actually signed up, this will be a chance to sign up as well. And again, you can do it by signing up with the IAF, so you get access to the full library. Here I have a number of different sessions that I'm working on. So this is just sort of my session folder. So I can see these 6 sessions here and a few more as I scroll down that I'm working on. And I can start a new session completely from scratch and start building up my agenda. But the beauty really of working in a program like Session Lab is you can really save some time when you come to design your sessions and use something that you've worked in before. Or we've got a template section on the left-hand side. Again, you can look inside any private templates that you've made. There's an IAF library template folder as well. And then there's lots of public templates here to explore through. You can have a look at any one of these. So a session and a template, they're really the same thing. So a session could be 1 day, could be 2 hours, could be 7 days long. A template could be exactly the same. Some of these are 7 hours, 15 minutes. Some of these are multi-day. We've got a design sprint here for 4 days. And you can click on any of these and open them up to check them out. And I've clicked on a team building one here. So this is the session planner. This is where you actually design your agenda. So what we've got, probably your eyes will be drawn first of all to the colors. So we've got all the different blocks inside our agenda that make up the different parts. You'll see the colors down the left-hand side are also the same parts, the same part of my day. But you can see there's colors that have been applied there, and I can click on the session overview, the session info on the right-hand side, and just see what those colors mean. These are all the different categories that I've applied to the blocks in my session. So I can see my day is split up. We've got an energizer at the start. We've got some preparation to begin the day. We've got a nice split of breaks throughout. And I can see overall, this is going to be 7 hours and 15 minutes long. I can drag and drop any part of my agenda around as I like to move it within my session. And these sort of action buttons on the right-hand side are some of the key things you would use when you're designing your agenda. We won't go through them all now, but you've got a note section over to the right, which you can easily drag and drop any blocks that you're not sure that you need over to the right side. If you let go in the right place, like I did there, perfect. And now that's stopped counting. Those 15 minutes have stopped counting towards my overall session time. So this will always be updated as you move things around your agenda and back into it too. Let's drop that back just here. There we go. So here we go, back in the session. One big key part of Session Lab is being able to share your session. So you can click on the share button here and invite any colleagues or anybody else to come and work on your session plan with you. So I can invite a colleague as an editor, maybe as a viewer if I just want him to view the session, but I can invite him to that and then press done. And then my colleague James can come and work in this session with me. And then the last sort of key thing I'm going to show you here is over in the right side, so the search bar. So what we were looking at earlier is the library, and there's a use button on all of those methods. So you can click on the use to add it to a session. So that's doing it from the library, adding it into a session plan. This is kind of doing the same thing, but in reverse. So instead we're inside the library, and we want to, sorry, inside a session, and we want to search inside the library. So I can do exactly what we were doing earlier with a little less, we can't sort of specify what we're looking for so much, but we can search for any keywords that we might like to search for. You can search in all the methods, any ones you've favorited, or like we were looking at the IAF library, and maybe I'll look for something for decision making. So I'm going to type in the word decision. This will search in the title and any of the text within the actual method. And again, just like before, you can click on any one of those that you like the look of, have a browse through. Again, leave some comments, etc. too, but you can drag and drop it into your agenda anywhere you like. And then that will add the activity into your agenda. I can see this is 360 minutes long. I might have something that I just wanted to do for 20 minutes, so I can update that. And you'll see the mini map on the right, on the left side, updates with the timing there too. But like I say, we're going to have a fuller session on sort of how to, a full demo and a full sort of look at all the different features of this planner in the future in May. But for now, it might be good just to take a look at one of these sessions and sort of have a little play around and see the type of thing you can do and how you can search the library, and specifically the IAF library here from directly within the session planner by clicking on the search button on the right hand side when you're in a session. Now, the last thing I'll say before I hand the power back over is Session Lab is, so the actual planner here is a free to use tool. So you can design some sessions. You can do lots of things with the free version. There's no need to pay. But if you did want some of the features like the sharing option that I showed you a bit earlier, that is a paid for feature. So there's a pro version and a team version that we can talk about at another time. You can find that information on sessionlab.com/pricing if you want to look at what's included in the paid plans and what's included in the basic. But with the basic version, you can access the planner and get cracking with designing some sessions. So I'll stop sharing the screen and I'm going to hand the power back over to you, Ulla, I think.
Thank you, Andy. Maybe if there are any questions to you at this time regarding the planner, even though we will have another session in May, the European region will focus on the session planner in this webinar. Yes, so if there is a pressing question here right now, you have a chance to speak to Andy. I think it's a great tool, and I must say I have used it, as Rebecca indicated. I planned this session, or I shared this session plan with the regional directors so they can, you know, add their twist to it. And I always update Andy, who is joining us. So he's one of the collaborators on my plan. And yes, so it's really great. It's great when you also want to collaborate with someone. It's easy to see how your timing is spread out. The one thing that I find a bit is when you pull in a method from a library, either method, any method, because the methods are always structured like before the session, what do I have to do? What's the process? When I work with the method, with the team, and what is the follow-up activity? What are, you know, maybe some results that I intend or that I not intend that may pop up. So all these considerations are actually pulled in. I mean, it's easy to delete, and to remove things. You have side blocks, you have comment blocks, so you can put some of the preparation work that you would want to consider in those blocks. But yes, so it's a learning. It's really a learning, but it's fun. It's really fun, and it makes session planning much easier. Does anyone already have some experience with Session Planner on the call? Doug?
I just want to say the color coding and just the system of look at it, like Rebecca said. I had a client recently, these were all CEOs. They saw the agenda for the first time, and it was almost like a Seinfeld skit. They all went, wow, we like the look of this. And what do the colors mean? And they're just, oh my gosh, people, like this is just, it's literally just a table with it's color coded. And they were like, well, that means because we're moving from phase to phase as we go through. And they were like, wow, this is really exciting. And a little part went, professional facilitator, okay, this is good. You're going to get a different size bill at the end of this than you might normally get. So it did work out. I'm just sharing that out there in the world. So a big shout out to Session Labs. That was wonderful. And I should have said before too, when I created those PowerPoint breakouts, those were in the evening looking at emails that James had sent me from Session Lab, literally, at 7 o'clock at night, going through and saying, there must be another icebreaker here that I can build out. So again, big shout out to IAF and to Session Labs. This stuff really does work and is helpful.
I love that. Thanks, Doug.
Thank you for that
Good to hear.
feedback. Yeah, you can actually, that's a feature, you can actually export the plan, because collaborators really have to have a paid account. And I don't think you want your client to be a collaborator of that kind to pay for your tool, but so you can export it into a PDF or a Word version and also then edit it more. And there's really different layouts in the Word version I saw. Yeah. Using a color coding system is helpful and the client understands better. Yes, Doug, thanks for putting that again in the chat. Yeah, I think we would like some feedback from you who are on the call here today. You have explored a little bit the methods library and Session Lab, and we want to take your attention a bit back to the methods library and I think that's also one reason why I love to be in these webinars, to get some inspiration and thoughts from our members across the globe on what can we do to make this methods library a more vibrant place and relevant for the future in the IAF. And I would like to move you back into breakout groups to just share that for a few minutes. What do you think could be done to make this tool a vibrant tool for our members and for yourself? So if I put you in new breakout groups, it's 4 or 5 persons, and just for a few minutes. So share your thoughts and come back with your experience. Thank you. I hope we have a few more coming. Yes, here we go. Hi,
Yes.
welcome back. Thank you for staying with us so long this afternoon and evening. Right. So, would you just like to share some of your thoughts how this methods library can be a vibrant tool for our membership going forward? What did you discuss? What did you think is worthwhile looking into further to develop this tool for us? Either type it in the chat or just raise your hand, open your mic, and share your ideas with us.
Leslie has a question in the chat that I think would be useful, Andy. She's
Yes.
asking if it's possible to share a high-level overview without all the detail with a client. And I have a related question, and that is, does the template, the planning tool, allow you to add your own content that isn't taken from Session Lab? So for example, we were using the example of, you know, if you pull in from another software platform like a Jamboard or a Menti or a Mural or something like that, and you have a method that you use all the time in one of those other platforms, you're probably not going to add that to Session Lab and bring it in. But we're just wondering, can you talk about both how to make this, like how to change what your template says to accommodate methods that maybe aren't in the library and or less detailed that you might be able to send to a client?
Yep, no, absolutely. So the first part, so the something simpler to send to a client. I might share my screen again if I can quickly, just because that's a quick feature that I can show you. So if I go back to my agenda here, yeah. So when you decide that you're ready to share your agenda, you've got the share button here. The first one is collaborators. This is where I added James earlier, and he can see all the detail of the session. The second one is just a visitor link. So this I can send to anybody, this URL, and they can see the session plan. They'll see the details. They won't see any comments, but they'll be able to see the session plan. But they don't need to create a Session Lab account. It's always the person who owns the session that needs to have the paid account to invite somebody. But the people invited can be free, can not even be Session Lab users to even view or edit the agenda. But probably the best option for you there is if you go to the export menu, you can choose the PDF function. We did just have a simple PDF, but we've recently developed it so you get a few different choices on the type of PDF that you would like to export. And we'll cover this in more detail in the sort of fuller session. But here you've got all the agenda, and I've chosen the agenda and the details. You can just export just the details, so you don't have this, you don't have the chart sort of at the top here or the table at the top. It's just the details. You can do a multi-day overview. So if we have multiple days, it will be just shown a high-level summary, or probably the best option is the day overview. So this will show you each day of your agenda, just with the times, just with the categories, if you want to keep them on there, and just with the title of what's happening in that little, in that block. The second question, having linked to sort of external software, if you've designed something in another app, say, for example, you might have something in, I don't know, Mural, you can obviously add a URL directly to there. So you can add a link to get there. In terms of importing in your methods, you would have to sort of type any content or cut and paste any text or content, but you can attach any diagrams, upload any, if you have a PowerPoint slide or any PowerPoint materials, you can upload those to the block, and then you can save it to your library for the future.
Oh, so good. Thank you. Appreciate that.
I also see this comment in the chat. Is there a way to show a summary for a client without all the detail? Andy has shown one way. And what I also do is I download it as a Word document, and then I edit it to the way that I would want it to be presented to the client, which is also, you know, it's good if you have that choice to edit. So I was glad to see the Word option there as well. A good life tip, try experiment with one category container so you don't get overwhelmed, right? Thank you.
I'm seeing Brad's hand up, Ula.
Yes, Brad.
Yeah, so we in our group had kind of one idea of, you know, taking a session that you're already familiar with, and then using Session Lab so that you kind of, you're not designing from scratch, but it's something that you know would be a way to kind of get into the tool. So that was a good suggestion. And then I just wanted to encourage like more kind of group sessions like this where you dig into that methods library. I think will help us become familiar with what's there. And I think some interaction around some of those specific methods like would be quite engaging for a facilitation community, right? To be like, we already in our small group started talking about SWOT and like benefits and drawbacks of SWOT. I feel like, you know, you could kind of do some sort of sessions where facilitators come together around a method in the library to have some conversations about it. So just an idea for kind of community of practice.
Great, thank you. That's great. Thank you for sharing those ideas. And I see a request already here for the link to the session in May. So Andy, everyone, I think you're up for a big crowd in May when
No
you
pressure.
go deeper.
Okay.
When you go deeper into the session planner tool. So just go to the iafworld.org website and look up for webinars. It may be up already, or it may come up over the next couple of days, the link for that session.
Yeah.
Rebecca, over to you.
Thanks so
Close
much
us
for
off
that.
tonight. Thank you.
Yeah. Folks, we're gonna, I've just got one other thing to show you that really ties in with what Ula was just talking about. So you can see here, sorry, let me just fix this, hang on. What we've got here is the upcoming calendar of events for the rest of this little trip around the globe. Some of it will be a little bit repetitive, as some of you know that have been here for many of them. The overall introduction to Session Lab is similar, but they're diving in different ways, and it could be that each regional director is designing it slightly differently. But you can see that the Europe, Middle East is happening, their session's happening in May, as we mentioned, and then we have the African American and Oceania ones coming up in future months. So please look for that. And then the other thing to look for, I've just put in the chat, we've only posted the May 11th one, but the next one's going to be May 25th. I need to get it up there, and I will. May 11th, Rita Gupta is doing a session on a few new features in Zoom that you might find useful. And then on the 25th of May, we're going to do one on comparing your experience with various collaborative platforms. And by that, I mean platforms not like collaborative like Jamboard and Mural and Miro, but more like collaborative like Remo and Kumo Space and Wonder, the ones that kind of look like a conference space, almost like a wedding floor plan. They don't all look like that, but the ones where people can actually kind of sit at tables together in real time and collaborate. And we'd love to hear people's experience with which platforms you're finding helpful, which ones your clients are willing to use and pay for. And so I'll be hosting that. I'm hoping to get Gerard Murphy into that one because he knows some stuff about this. But if anyone else knows good things about that, please let me know, or at least show up and come ready to share your experience. Then in June, we'll be planning a facilitation book club. Also want you to look at the upcoming events that you'll see on the IAF World events page. There's a great series for members on the business of facilitation happening through the Europe and Middle East region. So we want to thank them in particular for extending that invitation to the rest of us. So lots going on. And before we wrap up, I want to make sure that we do two things. One is, I'd love for you to embed a little bit of what you've learned today by actually typing one thing you're going to do as a result of having been here. Okay, so that's what I'd like you to put in the chat right now. One thing that you are going to commit to yourself to do, to put into action, something that you've heard about or learned today. Maybe it's even just send an email to somebody else that was on the call that you want to connect with or something, but just one action will help you to do it. So put that in the chat, please. And while you do that, I'd like to extend my sincere thanks to Andy and to Ula and to Hope and Jillian, who was here previously, who's a my board counterpart, for the support that you're giving not only to our session, but to those all around the world. So really do appreciate your support with these sessions. And not only that, but on the refresh team for the methods library, because that's a truckload of work and it benefits all of us and we really appreciate it. So thank you so much. And folks, I hope that you have a great rest of your day and evening. Thank you to the European friends who stayed up late for us. Stay well, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Thank you to all, and thank you to
Thank
you,
you.
Rebecca, for hosting this today. Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
everyone.
Thanks for
Thanks,
everything.
Hope.
Thanks, everyone. Wonderful
Thanks,
session.
Andy.
Cheers.
Thanks,
Thank you, everyone.
Doug. Ian, for your great comments.
Bye.
Bye.
Everyone.